All right, welcome everybody. So the best revenge for Tesla shareholders, it's going to be when Tesla business skyrockets. Today we'll take a look at what to expect for Q1, Q2, and beyond. We'll review how Tesla stacks up in robotaxi, bots, and electric vehicles as it compares to recent moves by competitors. So we've got the bulls here with us today. I've got Tesla Boomer Mama, the Queen, Alexandra Mertz. Got Jeff Watts, also known as Mr. Incredible, the Rational Bull. And you've got this week Larry Goldberg, the Golden Bull. Welcome, guys.
Hi there.
So lots of topics to cover today. The first one we will do is the hate crimes, how retail shareholders are responding, and then we'll take a look at the business, right? I mean, is Tesla going to be affected this year? There's two camps, right? The people who are kind of afraid of what's happening with the brand and others who are looking at the actual fundamentals. We'll do that in detail. But I thought we'd start off with something really good news a little bit here. Tell us what we're looking at here, Alexandra.
Yeah, so this just came out in the Financial Times. They had a discussion with JP Morgan, who has access to more detailed trading data than we have. And it clearly shows that retail shareholders are purchasing here at these levels. It's actually funny because we had a Lutnick yesterday evening on one of the Fox shows, encouraging, obviously, right-wing retail investors to invest in Tesla. So there seems to be a real trend for retail to get back, which I love because at the moment let me just break this down. Whenever I talk about who has Tesla shares, I take off the 14% insiders, Elon, Kimball, and the board members. So those I'm not counting. And up to last year in June, we were about half and half of the remaining between institutions and us retail shareholders. Now that has completely switched. Institutions have purchased a lot, especially in November and December, and are now outweighing our shares by about 15%. So it's about 58 to 42 or something like that. But now at these prices, retail is coming back. And that really rejoices me. And it rejoices me for two reasons. One, obviously, because I want as much retail in there as possible. And second, in a couple of short weeks, we will have the proxy for this year's shareholder meeting. Will be any time in the next 6 weeks, could be as late as last April. And then in that proxy, it will say there's a certain cutoff date, usually about 2 weeks before. So let's say 15th of April, if it is end of April, and at that day you have a voting power or not. And there will be some, I have no idea about it, but I expect to have some really crusty good stuff to vote on, and more retail we are on that certain date that counts for the vote, better we're off. The other good news today was that in the UK now some of the big banks are moving to make it easy and possible for their clients to vote on US shares, obviously including Tesla shares. So that's a very good news, because that was one of the three big clusters that we had issues with last year in June. And then the one thing that I'm rejoicing about, this is our first shareholder meeting as a Tesla Incorporated company, so the rules have changed a bit. I think they're in favor of us, and I'm really looking forward to this one. So please just all make sure you can vote, that you have your ducks aligned, that you know this is going to come in the next couple of weeks. Don't lend your shares. Make sure if you're doing any covered calls that your shares are still in your account. So all that is important now, because the date is coming soon, is very crucial.
Okay, thank you for that. So that's retail shareholders are buying the dip. Have you guys?
I didn't say the whole thing. BTFD. I didn't say it.
Yeah, the article says, I don't know if people can see this. The article says retail traders are BTFD in Tesla. I guess that's a crypto term. Says buy the friggin' dip. Yeah, that's good news to hear that it's the retail shareholders that are going in. Is that actually good news, or is that bad news? Or why is the institutionals not going in and really buying the dip?
Well, because some of them went in between 400 and 480 and have to cut their losses now. When you're a retail shareholder, you always, Gary explained that very well. You always have your price targets, but you also have your stop loss levels. And obviously at these levels, they may feel this is now a moment, it's better to cut. I think it's better to enter, but it depends where you got in. It also depends obviously on your horizon. And I had a couple of questions in the comments on when is the shareholder meeting. We don't know. What happens typically is the date of the last year determines this year, and there can be a little bit of wiggle room. But last year was actually delayed because they needed time for that special committee and all that crap. So I don't know whether they're using last year's dates, which was 13th of June, to just say, okay, we'll do it in the week of the 13th of June this year, or whether they're going to advance it now a little bit, given they were late last year. So I don't know, but it's coming. The proxy is coming in the next 6 weeks. They can't just constantly extend it.
Alexandra, do you know what the percentage of institutional votes were in favor of the package last year?
I don't know. I don't know the total institute. I think we have that statistics, but I don't have it on top of my head. But what we did do, we really did a deep dive, seeing who changed from 2018 to 2024. And there you had some of the good guys like Vanguard and BlackRock. They were the ones that were negative in 2018 and became positive in 2024. But I can look them up. We did all the stats. I had a whole team of people. I mean, this Tesla community is just something. I whatever I call out and say I need this and that, there's always somebody who knows how to do it and got together. So we have all those stats.
The reason I ask is because my impression was that the institutional shareholders were very supportive.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the Schwab and those ones were still as negative, and so you had a lot of the pension funds that were negative of the.
Right,
so
but the overall percentage, I mean, there were the outstanding, but the overall percentage appears to be very supportive. I'd be very interested in that number. I think if there were a vote this year, I think things would change, just because we've heard so many rumblings about, Elon not being full-time and all that other stuff and the Doge. So there could be a change. But I have a different perspective. Do they even need a vote on the package? It seems to me the Delaware court ruling would not apply to the Texas company.
Correct. That is correct. But I don't think they're going to do anything on the compensation before we have the appeals court. I don't expect in this year's shareholder meeting anything on Elon's compensation. I do, however, expect stuff like, maybe whether we should invest into XAI and, more of topics rather than compensation or board matters.
Right. But I don't think any XAI resolution without the company agreeing to such a thing with XAI would be supported by the board.
I agree. So what happens for these votes is, and the whole question is, do they now still respect Delaware law, or do they consider we're in Texas? And that has only been decided 2 weeks ago. Remember, that was that Donald Ball case that is now partially summary judged. And so we know we're now in Texas. We're now in Texas since June 14th. That is for sure. That is a fact that cannot be put in question anymore in Delaware court. But that only came out 2 weeks ago. So this idea of XAI investment has been running around for much longer than that. And during that longer period, there was still a risk it could be Delaware. So I do believe, and this is me purely speculating, that they would have applied Delaware standards to that question, just because it wasn't sure yet whether we were in Texas. And that meant that they had to put in place a special committee of at least one board director. So I do believe they would have done that to come up with whether it's recommendable and what would be a good price to do it. Then second step, it would go to the board. The board has to be in majority for it. And then the board would say, okay, we bring it to the shareholders. So I don't know where we are there.
I get all that. All I'm saying is that the company hasn't indicated at all, and certainly Elon hasn't indicated at all. So I think this is speculation as to whether they would be interested in an investment in XAI, or XAI would allow it. So I think.
And we do have obviously a new marker because, a new marker indirectly. You may actually know more about this. With X having a capital raise recently, being valued again at 44 billion and X having 10% of XAI. So for that valuation, there had to be a new valuation of XAI on the table.
There's a new XAI round going out.
The valuation of XAI had nothing to do with the investment in X. The valuation in XAI was for a new round, specifically for this round. And it was based upon that valuation that article came up with the valuation for, or that, sorry, rephrase that the round for X whoever invested in X inferred that valuation. So, but the valuation of X at 44 billion was set some time ago, I will tell you. I think at least 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Good. Yeah, and I agree with you, Jeff. I heard about a new XAI round.
Okay. Well, Alexandra, thank you. This is important information for us to know what's actually coming, shareholder votes coming up, who's buying the dip. Let's come back to talking about what's happening right now that's affecting most people, of course, is this hate crime. But then we need to put that in perspective. We need to talk about the fundamentals of business. Where is the company going? Where do you guys think Tesla is going to be by the end of this year, given where we're at today? Is this going to carry on even further? So just by looking at this data points here, putting things into perspective, from January to March, there have been 20 hate crimes that's been publicized, talked about. This is the violent ones, the arsons. I don't think it includes, people skiing cars and so forth. And it's small, right? Relatively, but Teslas are only 0.9% of all U.S. vehicles out there. There's 2.5 million Teslas on the U.S. roads. So compared to other car makers and so forth, it is definitely a lot higher. And so that's clearly a big deal. But you can see here that the media, of course, is also amplifying this. It's not like as if 50% of the population is now hating on Tesla per se, as some people are perceiving this. Tesla is employing 60,000, workers in the U.S. They have 130,000 globally. So who are you hurting if you're doing something like this? The Tesla owner, which is more likely than not even a Democrat. And there's about 200 sales rooms across the U.S. About 90 of them are in California. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this? Does this mean that it's actually, it's just a drop in the bucket? Does this help you guys? What do you think, Jeff?
So first off, I mean, yes, the media does amplify things. Obviously, there is something going on here. It should be addressed. This is not normal. This is not, this happens all the time kind of stuff. And it should be addressed. I think the protest movement, you'll hear, I think all of us will say that, very open to protesting movement. If you have a message, do it peacefully, do it calmly. I think the issue that's happening here is there's a certain percentage of people that are not peaceful when you start to grow these movements. And if you don't grow them effectively, if the messaging isn't clear and it's turned into some sort of incendiary messaging, then you start growing that percentage of people that could do crazy things. And it's not even founded on the foundation of it isn't really clear. Elon has $200 billion of wealth outside of Tesla, and so there's no taking down of, you're not taking them down by doing this. So it's not even the objectivity isn't even clear. And then about 87% of Tesla is not owned by Elon. It's owned by people, retail shareholders, pension funds. The Minnesota pension fund owns, I think, 1.6 million shares, and the governor's up there talking about the stock, while his constituents in their pension fund, their value's decreasing. So real people own the stock, and like you said, Herbert, real people work at the company, and all they want to do is they want to come in and build cars. It's the most American-made brand in the country. If you look at if you look at all the U.S. automakers, the only one that does 100% of their assembly, all the major ones, not counting Rivian and Lucid, who also do their assembly here, but all the major ones, Tesla does all of their assembly in the United States. And of course, they have a very high tech employee base as well, working on the forefront of physical real world AI and advanced manufacturing, advanced engineering. So this is not those people are, these are people of the population. We shouldn't be doing anything to these people. So this is what happens when you have a large movement like this. I think it needs to be like under control. Okay, what's the message? What are we protesting? Okay, but the problem we're running into is we have this small percentage that are acting out. And I think, though, in general, I think the uncertainty on people's minds right now is just how long and how deep does this go? And I think that is the question that's out there. We have some real-time information from this quarter. This quarter is going to be extremely muddy from a data perspective because they're changing over their top-selling product. Not only their top-selling product, the top-selling car in the world. There's one car model in the world that sells more cars than any other car in the world. Ford, GM, Chinese, you name it. It's the Tesla Model Y. And they're changing that product over. It's mostly done, and now they're re-ramping that product now. And what we're seeing is we're seeing a gap in supply in the quarter. And I've talked about it ad nauseum on, Herbert and others have talked about it, but, it's going to be a significant amount of production, maybe 4 weeks of production of that product. And that could be, anywhere from 90 to 110,000 units. You kind of pick the number in the range of production that just comes out of the equation. But what we're seeing now in the latest China data and the latest data out of Europe is as the new Model Y re-ramps and it gets out in the stores, people are coming in and buying it. Gary Black has access to ALTD credit card data in the U.S. as well, and it's not showing any drop-off. In fact, it's showing several spikes throughout the month in March. And that's the credit card data that's used when you're putting your deposit to order a Tesla. So I think what's the elephant in the room? Is anybody asking Elon, okay, what's going on? What's going on with Tesla? What's going on with your brand? What's going on with the order inflow rate? Now, we may be in or entering a quiet period, and he probably can't respond directly to that. I'm sure he will respond to that on the earnings call, but that is the key number. If the order inflow rate is affected, I believe Elon will make changes, and I believe that the company will make changes. So you kind of have to look at what's going on. We're getting mixed signals on everything. So you don't see, a lot of promotion activity on the Model Y. Is it in supply yet? How much supply is there? We only have the Model 3 going on promotion in the US. And then I think there's a Cybertruck financing promotion as well. So it's kind of mixed. They had very low inventory entering the year. Very low inventory means you're going to have very low sales until you get your production up. So if you have your number one product not in production, it's going to take a while for your production to get up. But if we look at these crowdsourced inventory trackers, which I'm not a huge fan of, but you can take some relative feedback from them, is when Tesla put the inventory out in the marketplace, it is burning off pretty quickly. So I think you're going to have a mixed bag. I think it's noisy. And I think it's going to be very noisy in the near term. But I think people should ask Elon what's going on and what's going on with your brand. Is there a problem? And if there is a problem, what's your plan to address it? I'd just be upfront and forward with him. And in terms of, we'll get to the other question. There's questions about, Elon and his, should he continue as CEO or not? I mean, we're starting to get, to me, this is where you start getting a lot of bottom signals, is when you start hearing some of this stuff. The answer is absolutely not. And the answer is absolutely it's his decision to work with the board on that. And I think he will make the best decision for the company and for the customers of the company. Ask him the question. Let's see what his answers are. Did I stun everybody in stunned silence?
No, you did not. But I just had this, you all know I'm a mother of 5 children. I always have the feeling Tesla shareholders or analysts, or whenever the crisis comes, it reminds me always of the most needy child crying for mama to now need this or need that, right? Elon has made his priority clear. He feels that Dodge is a priority because it's directly also a priority for Tesla, right? He feels this is important for America to survive and to strive, and then have Tesla, have the future we're all dreaming of. So it feels a little bit needy when I hear, I love Dan Ives, I do. But when I hear Dan Ives going, oh, Musk has to speak and Musk has to do this and Musk has to do that, I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, he's the busy mom who is doing a lot of things, and maybe he doesn't have time to now just stay there and say some nice kind words to Tesla shareholders, so that and analysts, and I think it's actually more analysts than shareholders, so that they are happy and calm again.
Okay, let me try to break this down a little bit from my perspective. So I love both what everything you guys have said. I completely agree with, right? So we have to look at the data, what's actually happening based on our research right now. The ones I've been looking at, I think if there is any kind of reduction in sales because of this brand damage, it's very small. It might be 5%. We know that there isn't any in China. I can explain all the data we got there, and same thing with Europe, surprisingly. Whether there is some in the US yet, we don't have that data to prove it or not. We'll see that later. Okay, so that's one thing, right? Is sales of Tesla going
skeptical,
down?
Herbert, I'm a little skeptical of that. I think there is brand damage in
I said
Europe.
If there is, but do you think it's more than 10%?
Yeah.
Like, if you had to guess, okay, you think it's more.
In Europe, I would say it's more. I think we're still to learn, but
right. Okay. So let's say that there is.
If I look at the demographic, if I just look at the demographic outline of Europe and compare it here, I think that it's bound to be higher, significantly higher. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we've heard from the Giga Berlin plant manager from Tesla saying that they have not seen it yet. Maybe he said something, maybe it was interpreted differently. We'll see. But so far. But the other part is, let's say, okay, number one, is it affecting Tesla sales? That's one question to ask. The second question is it affecting Tesla owners? And clearly it is, right? Tesla stores. This is now in danger. So Elon needs to address this. He has been. He's going out and being interviewed, and he's been saying, clearly that this is a big deal. He understands how big deal. We need to hear on both sides, right? Democrats stepping up and saying this is wrong, strictly, absolutely wrong. You also need more Elon going out there and saying more of this, trying to change this narrative. But I guess the rest of the conversation we'll have after we address this is this going to actually impact the fundamentals for the rest of the year, where we see Tesla going to head towards? I
would add a little bit to this, Herbert. I appreciate how you summarized it too. When this conversation starts, everybody just immediately starts talking past each other, and it's very bizarre. The brand impact is non-zero. We do not know the number. If we can sit here and everything is just going to turn into ultimately an ass pull. We do have objective data out there, and we should cite the objective data and have responses. We have objective credit card data of people swiping their cards to order Teslas. That is real data. We have registration data. We have China weekly insurance data. We have data. We should talk to the data and then respond. So it's a non-zero number. Nobody's sitting up here because you're bullish, you're not bullish on the company. You're not bullish on the company. You think like nobody's buying a Tesla anymore. You have these two extremes in these conversations. The answer is it's a non-zero number. The other answer is to take this one step further is I believe Elon's being interviewed and he's being asked some of these questions. And I see some of the commentary and accents like, wow, this is crazy, or wow, this is not good, or wow, these people are crazy. That's fine. So the question is though, is now what? What is when should there be a plan? At some point, is it an earnings call? Is it before? When should there be a plan to say, here's what we're seeing and here's what we're doing about it? Because he does have a duty to the brand. He does have a duty to his shareholders. My personal belief is the greater good for the shareholders and the product, its roadmap, its portfolio, is his brain tied to Tesla. That is the greater good for the company. And we will see that in the form of execution. The key question we have to ask is, has is there been a drop off in execution? This is the question regarding his presence. I know some of the analysts are talking about his presence in factories. Some of it's an optics thing, like show up and take a picture at a factory. That's bullshit. That's not how real operators actually work. Real operators have to figure out what's the job, are we executing, and is the work happening or not? And I think Elon, I think the leadership team know if there's a problem with execution or not, and would his presence help improve that execution? There's no question if he never had, by the way, before Doge started, he was never 100% at Tesla. He was split, and he was continuing to add splits into his daily workday. And guess what? As he was adding splits into his daily workday, the product line and the vision for what Tesla's building actually grew and expand. We became a company focused on autonomy. We became focused on humanoid robots. So that's what you want the CEO to do. You want them to set the vision. You want them to put the company in a right position from a strategy perspective. This day-to-day thing, I think there is a fair question out there, which is, is there a visible day-to-day leader? Right now, the answer is there are 15 people that Elon has hired over the last 10 to 15 years that he has mentored in his likeness, and that's the answer. But if I were to summarize it, there is non-zero brand damage. We do not know the number. By the way, when we see the Q1 production and sales numbers, we're still not going to know the number.
Right.
What we need to know from the company is, what's your real-time inventory? What's your real-time order inflow rate? And are you seeing a problem or not? And do you think it's manageable or not? Yes or no?
Yeah, and so I reiterate what I said on X a couple of days ago. I think this is actually the first time where I think we should have a PR department or a speaker, right, who has a voice on Tesla and who has that mission. Because and it's actually funny because I see Elon appreciate the press secretary of President Trump, right? He interacts with her on X and he seems to appreciate her a lot, but he doesn't see that we actually should have the same thing for Tesla. He should have the same thing for Dodge. When you have an independent person who is good at communications, and he may not be the best at that, give him that, who is good at communication and who can bring out the news that we all try to spread on X. I mean, this morning I spread a newsletter from the Information on very good news on the progress they're making on the batteries for the Cybertruck, which is in the end going to save us $1 billion a year. I mean, this is huge news. But if there is nobody to communicate on this, if there is nobody who brings this to the masses and to the mass media, because you may hate the mass media, you may think and hope it goes under, but in the meantime, it's still there, and currently they have a voice again. So while you have all that, I think what was more lacking than Elon's focus is that we finally have somebody who speaks up, not only about technical issues, but about things that will move institutional investors, the media, and obviously us, just something a little bit more official than an X account.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'll just say one quick thing. Previous current course and speed, like a year ago, the question was out there: should we have PR? Should we have this massive advertising campaign? And it was honestly a valid, debatable topic about educating consumers and so forth. But you had a certain signal and you had a certain noise level out there going. And now what's happened is the noise level has gone to extreme levels. And so I think your point is appropriate, Alexandra, is there's been a change in terms of the status and having another voice out there that can kind of just speak objectively and respond. There's probably value in that now, given what's happened with the noise level. That's just reality.
Yeah, we're also at the potential point as it continues to escalate, continues moving forward here, that some people are concerned that it could actually become, semi-permanent, that this becomes a real damage to the brand that lasts long. Others say, it doesn't matter. Years from now, nobody will remember
so
this.
Many of these. I mean, this one, I grant you, it's tougher than most that we've seen, but we've seen so many of these come and go. I mean, this is not permanent. It's a buying opportunity for those who have money. It's a shakeout of those that were not here for the right reasons, but those that did their homework and see the future of Tesla and understand the company, they know this is going to be a couple of tough weeks, maybe even short months, and then that's that.
I think the earnings report, the earnings conference later in the coming month is going to be the crucial moment, because that's when Elon is going to have to respond to the questions relating these related questions. He's going to be asked about his presence. He's going to be asked about, what the succession or what the interim process is going to be, who's going to speak for the company. I think that's going to be foremost on most people's minds. And also the Elon that turns up. One of the reasons for the stock's recovery from last year was the very strong Elon presence and his outlook in the last two earnings calls. So I think this earnings call is a critical moment. And, if Elon comes on the call with a clarion call to the future and answers these questions, addresses these questions and addresses them positively, I think that'll be very good. And we will also get an insight into his views in terms of ongoing management communication and his ongoing attention at Tesla and his other companies. Remember that his intention is that Doge really only exists until mid of next year. And so I think that's going to be his principal point. So, yeah, we're going through a moment. I think Alexandra's right. This is a pretty tough moment, probably tougher than the production hell, although the production hell got pretty serious after the 420 tweet. We really hit a low moment. That, by the way, was the biggest opportunity in Tesla stock. I made more on that moment than I'd made from years prior. So it was a very spectacular recovery. I expect a similar recovery because I think this year is going to be a very transformative year, and I think next year is going to be like a rocket ship. So I look at all this happening as just noise. I trust Elon's ability to run the company from a distance. Right now, the company's executing on a strategy he set some years ago, and they're executing extremely well. And I looked at Lars's body language and France's body language and their views. So I'm very comfortable at the moment. And right now, Lars and France are the spokespersons for the company, and they're very good spokespersons for the company. So anyway, that's just my view, but anybody can, I can't speak for all the shareholders, and I certainly do understand institutionals' nervousness, and I understand retail, the pressures that retail shareholders are under, but this too shall pass.
All right. Any last things? So I want to talk about how retail shareholders are responding, but any last comments about it's like one of the biggest topic that there is right now. So.
Yeah, no, I think if I were to weave a couple of these points, I do think Tesla needs something between what Lars and Franz are doing in Ashok and some of the hourly attacks on the company that are occurring. I think there needs to be something in there. I think they are stepping. I think I'm seeing it on social media in terms of the comms are really stepping up. And I also think there has to be a very clear message to people that want to purchase a Tesla and drive a Tesla that you will be you will be safe and on the launch part, like this is a short-term issue. It's being dealt with. Like there needs to be I think there is some level of concern. At the same time, on the other side of that, you have a whole new swath of people that were not ever going to get themselves into a Tesla or an EV that are doing that. I don't want to be Pollyannish and saying one is overwhelming the other at this point. And by the way, there's a real tactical issue, by the way, in terms of red states and access to being able to purchase a Tesla. So we have local state government laws that prevent the sale of Teslas in many of these areas. But guess what? Conservatives and independents live everywhere in the country, and I think you are going to see an influx of people that are maybe more interested that weren't before. I also think you're going to see a percentage of people that just don't want anything to deal with like what's going on right now. And some of that demand may be perishable because someone needs to go buy a car on, March 21st. They need to go buy a car. And when someone goes to buy a car, to me, they're going to be looking at, okay, what's the best value for my money? What's the safest product? What's the best? Like, those are the first two questions I want to answer. The third thing I'd be like, okay, what's going on? Like, maybe the brand, but it's like, okay, but if your brand is on the news, the 5:30 news every night being firebombed, that's not a good thing. So I do think that there needs, besides what law enforcement is helping with, and besides what's happening with labeling these crimes, I think there needs to be another step and another plan to just a more secure the brand here going forward, and not let this spiral any further. Just, again, speaking openly and speaking objectively.
Okay. Yeah, I think we need to educate everybody that every Tesla has cameras. So we need to let them know, don't just go out there and do something. You'll be caught. Let's talk about how retail shareholders are responding. There is this the lawsuit against Elon Musk pay package. And then Alexandra, why don't you tell us what happened next year?
Yeah, well, I mean, first thing I want to do is thank Larry and you, because you helped me and John and Farzad to set up an amicus brief in the Tonetta case. That's exactly it. So that was filed 2 days ago. And the same day, also 12 professors, including Professor Anderson, filed their amicus brief, which was more technical. They made some very good points as well. But we've had really, I think, it's a 27, 28-page document, very good points how this wrong judgment of the Chancery Court impacted us retail shareholders. So this was now deposited with the appeals court. It is part of the procedure for the appeals. Let me just recall what's happening in the appeals. Tesla put down their briefs last week on the 11th. We put ours on the 18th. Now, next month, the plaintiff's attorneys have the occasion to do theirs. Then there will be a hearing, probably around August, September, and a verdict probably end of the year, December. No, could be November, probably December. Could also go over to next year, beginning of next year. So that's why we are in the Tonetta case. We all know what's at stake. If we win that appeal, the old ruling on Elon's compensation stands. The 2.3 billion that have been accounted for already are in the books. There they are. If it does not, we may have a last shot at the federal Supreme Court in DC. Not sure they will take the case, but that could be a last stance. Otherwise, we would have to set up in Texas a new compensation plan. That would be much more expensive, depends on the share price then, obviously, but could be a 20, 30, 40, 50 times multiple of the amounts that I just cited. So we're really fighting that is not becoming the case. So thank you again for joining me. I'm really happy I could count on all of you immediately. It was really great to see all the support. And the second thing we're doing is we're inviting Tesla car owners, enthusiasts, shareholders, whoever wants it, to purchase on Amazon or wherever else these red heart stress balls. Now they're like 2 inches big, and to deposit them on Teslas in your neighborhood, in your community. Take a picture, not the license plate, just of the thing, and then just paying it forward, hoping that this takes on. This was proposed by one of my ex-followers and subscribers, and he told me about a similar initiative that happened for Jeep, the Jeep Ducks, and which then went nationwide and internationally, a very cute thing. And I just think it's a nice sign of appreciation. These red hearts don't cost a lot, less than a buck. And if we could have just thousands and thousands, and these pictures on X shared, or even on other social media, I think this could become a nice way of paying forward our Tesla love and support, without doing any political statements, without going anywhere. This is about Tesla, and I hope this takes off.
I have a technical question, which I'm not sure the panel can answer, but it's sort of swing around in my head.
Yeah, that's that.
There you go. And that is, why would we need another shareholder vote? We've had a shareholder vote. The Delaware court will not accept it for a Delaware corporation, but we, shareholders and the board of directors for that matter, in the Texas corporation, which is the same corporation. It is the same corporation. Why can we not just respect the last two votes and instantiate the plan? I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm sure
that's interesting, because the question is, because you do know that at the moment there is also a law initiative that they're rushing through Texas. And I was always wondering, why are they rushing this through? Right. And I mean, obviously, right. And then I thought they're rushing this through so we can have a new vote. We can have some vote, right? Because
I didn't think
let me just put the.
Honestly, I'm proposing the suggestion that we don't even need a vote.
That would be great, Larry.
That we just simply observe the vote, the last two votes, and say that we're instantiating the plan according to the vote. Delaware law doesn't apply to us anymore.
Yeah, let me just explain to the people that maybe not, follow us on every little post of this whole thing. So Delaware, you're right. Delaware law does not apply to us for anything later than the 14th of June last year. So whatever we do now, Chancery Court, Chancellor McCormick, goodbye. So if those two votes could stand for a future action, combined with this new Texas law, let me explain what they're proposing. They're proposing that no minority shareholder can really bring a suit against a company until there is at least a groupment of 3% of shareholders. So in the case of Tesla, that means I think it's 90 million shares. So the Tonetta cases of 9 shares would not be possible anymore under Texas law. And I love that. I mean, I know people go like, oh my God, but you want to sue Tesla, go ahead. But if the case is good enough, you will find 90 million shares. There will be especially, pension funds and all that will join you. So 3% is a good enough threshold for me, because it just avoids all these tiny little, and let's just face it, let's do it, recruited shareholders. Because what happens, and I have the proof of that, I've published an ad of a law firm that was associated to the Tonetta case, doing an ad saying, we won the Tonetta case, now we have this and this on this California California-based corporation that's in Delaware. I'm looking for a shareholder. If anybody has some shares in this, please raise your hand and come with us, because we're needing a shareholder to do this case, right? So they're actively recruiting shareholders to bring fraudulent cases there. If they're not fraudulent, they will find 3% of shareholders. But these tiny little shareholder cases, it has to stop. I know the lawyers are all screaming. Of course they're screaming. They're the ones getting rich by all this, both the ones winning and losing, because they get paid in any case. So I'm really happy Texas is bringing this forward, but I was really wondering why they're pushing it so hard now so quickly. I mean, on top of it, it really hurts Delaware. Delaware is going through all these changes, trying to make it better, watering it down the second after they propose them. But anyway, if Delaware cannot, and they don't have the attention to bring forward a law where there has to be a minimum threshold of shares to bring a suit, then Texas will win. Because corporations hate it, and us shareholders, we should hate it. We're paying for these stupid lawsuits. This crap is, how much time have we lost? You, me, thousands of hours on stuff that we could have spent much better. And now just think of what that means in terms of lawyers within Tesla, board meetings, executives meetings, the whole mood going down by this stupid crap. So I agree with you, Larry. If there is a way, if there is a path to use those 2 shareholder votes without having to revote, that would be fabulous. Absolutely fabulous.
I don't know what the law is, whether this is a new corporation or whether it's simply I think it was just a domestication of an existing corporation.
That's the word.
And as a redomestication, I'm I'm just wondering whether, in fact, we can't just recognize these votes. And then, so I think the reason lawyers wouldn't want to do that is because it may invite a further case in Texas. But you're right. If we get this new law passed, it's going to be a very high hurdle for them to bring that vote. Very high hurdle. Interesting. Well, we'll see what they do.
Okay.
I mean, I'm.
This cheers me up. Thank you, Larry. This cheers me up.
Great job, guys. Appreciate that. Let's talk about what's going to happen the rest of this year. So we talked about these things that are happening with the lawsuit, with the hate crimes. Is this going to affect the fundamentals for Tesla the rest of this year? We can look at the progress with FSD and the new permit, that one step forward in California for a robotaxi. You've got the Q1 numbers, the Q2 numbers, what's going to happen for this year, the competitive kind of environment, what's going on. Who wants to start with, what are you thinking? Jeff, maybe we haven't heard from you in a little bit here. What are you thinking about the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think Elon needs to stitch together what he stated on the Q3 earnings call, 20 to 30% growth this year, and then where we stand, whenever this earnings call is, April week 4. Where do we stand now, given everything that we know, given the Model Y release timing? And I've said before, arguable that how well this is going in terms of the re-ramp of the new product. We don't know. We don't know this. We don't know if we're in full supply yet. We don't know if we're back to peak production levels yet. Probably not. So where are we at? Because that's 2/3 of Tesla's former volume, and then now you've got new models. And the new affordable models are more than just these Model 3 or Y variants coming off of that line. That's great. When are they being released? When are they available to order? And when will consumers be stepping into them in mass? I think is a very important for them to update everyone, because by the time this call happens, it's the end of April and we're already about 30% through Q2, and the promise was that these would be available in Q2. What, we don't know. Is it 1, 2, or 3 vehicles? We don't know. But I think you could. I think my whole take on this is, again, there will be a few vehicles. They will probably be staggered in terms of release. But I also think that there will be a new version of the Cybertruck. And there's talk about various trade-offs that they're doing on the vehicle to take the cost structure down. But the big thing is going to be this dry electrode process. And just in 30 seconds or less, this is a big deal for the 4680. It shrinks the size of the factory. It eliminates all the wet processing, all the drying that's involved in that, takes all of that out of the equation. So less CapEx, less factory size. Now you can cut and paste the 4680 operation and paste it into the various Gigafactory locations and have something that's very competitive from a cost structure perspective. So this is a big deal. This is a big moment for Tesla producing batteries. If some of this reporting that we're seeing is true, we do not have anything official from the company. We do have posts from the company over the last several months of the first Cybertruck. There's prototypes out there with dry electrode testing. So you can stitch some of this together from the media reporting and the company this is coming that will meaningfully take the cost structure down the Cybertruck. And I wanted to address something really quick on the Cybertruck, because there's people taking like, oh, this is a flop. This isn't, it's terrible. I think a couple things can be true at the same time. 38 to 40,000 units last year. I think people had higher expectations last year. The ramp was pretty slow in the beginning. And then I think you had some exhaustion at those higher price tiers, basically greater than $100,000 average transaction price until you got to the very end of the year. I think you did have some exhaustion. But if you just take it all in context, it was the number one selling EV truck in the country. There's no other EV truck that outsold it. And they have been in production for 3 years, by the way, the Rivian and the Ford F-150. So they'd have plenty of time to come down the cost curve, plenty of time to come up the supply curve. That was year one for Cybertruck. So just keep that in context. Now, take it a broader context. How many vehicles that are trucks that are sold above $100,000 in the U.S. every year? I did some research. That's about 80,000 vehicles. So if Tesla 86,000 vehicles. So if Tesla did about 38,000, they did a huge portion of the trucks or pickup trucks that are of all ICE, EV, hybrid, all combined. They did a huge percentage of sales of that category. So I think people need to keep things into perspective. My take is the next volume unlock comes when they can take the cost structure down meaningfully and get closer and closer, to maybe $50,000 to $60,000. Then you have a huge volume unlock for the Cybertruck. And the people who bought their Cybertrucks love the product in general. That's the responses we're seeing. So I just want to go through some of the data and some of the numbers on that really quickly, Q2 to Q4, but really Q2 to Q4, and I want to wrap it up because I know I'm talking too long. It is going to be about the introduction of unsupervised autonomy. And I want to remind people, just like the introduction of the new vehicles, you're dealing with brand new technology. Okay. With the introduction of the new affordable vehicles, you have a lot of existing technology, but you just have execution risk when you're trying to bring 10,000 components together. Think of them as individual trains and you're trying to get them to run on time. You have some execution risk, but I think that execution risk will be measured in weeks or a few months. It's not a year thing. This unsupervised, I also think we are now down to the short strokes because it went from we think we'll have it this year, to now it's down to a quarter, down to a month. And I think if there is any delay, it's going to be rather short in duration, but there could be some risk. But I think it's all about unsupervised, and it's all about Optimus ramping in the second half, and the visual about 50 to 60 feet above, in a kind of a platform in the factory, and looking down and seeing dozens, if not hundreds, of Optimus doing real work in a Tesla factory. I think that's going to be an eye-opening event. And then if that leads to them being on pace to do 50 to 100,000 next year, and then unsupervised is going well, I think it'll be that is the valuation differential from Tesla being an auto company to Tesla being a tech AI company.
Do you think, Jeff, that if, let's say, those things do happen at the end of this year, what happens to the brand, and all this still happening? What if it's still happening? Is it going to overcome it? Now the narrative will change, or it doesn't matter what you do, this is going to overcome that?
Well, these things they're not binary. So I think there'll be residual effects on the brand, both very positive and very negative. The question is you don't want that to move further and further and further towards the middle, grabbing more and more people, because you're going to have, that's what you don't want. So you want to head it off, and you want it to return back to the fringes, because you had people on the fringe before. I'll never buy a Tesla. You had people coal rolling Teslas out there. You had people parking in Supercharger. You had these extremes all along, but now it's grown. Now it's meaningfully grown. So if you're Tesla, you want to get this contained and controlled locally. But I'm a firm believer that product does overcome a lot of this. And if you have the right product from a feature functionality perspective that just doesn't exist, and you have it at a price point that also doesn't exist, you create massive amounts of TAM and growth. And as long as there's nothing nefarious going on with the brand in terms of its products, its safety, the efficacy of the company, as long as none of that's happening, this is purely a perception issue of, I don't like the politics of the CEO.
Yeah,
product is greater than brand.
I agree. Larry, do you want to address what you're expecting for the rest of the year?
It's going to be a turbulent year. I think I can say that with a fair degree of confidence. A lot turns on what happens with these lower cost vehicles. I haven't seen evidence of it, although there's some testing going on right now at Giga Texas, and that has been put really under wraps, which is encouraging. That's kind of what happened before the robotaxis were rolled out. So that's interesting. So we may well have time still to see some rollout of the low cost vehicles before the June-ish deadline. or timeline that's been suggested, and if that happens, that's going to be very bullish for this year. Whether or not the robotaxi service starts in June is going to be very bullish. Sales of the Cybertruck over the coming year. I mean, I saw in Joe Tegmeyer's video yesterday, I saw a bunch of Cybertrucks being rolled out to the delivery. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for a very significant upturn in the year. So those are the positive signs. The negative signs are all this negative press of the potential for missing some of these dates. I am very much looking forward to the next release of FSD. Very pleased with the current release. I think we are really close. There are a few features that I think still have to be added, but that would be a very positive sign. So there are plenty of opportunities for very positive movement, and there are significant opportunities for missing some of these dates. And so it's going to be a turbulent year. A lot turns on Elon's presence in the earnings call, and what he tells us in the earnings call in terms of the short term. And the rest, for the rest of the year, all depends on these, hitting these marks. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that was very wise for both of you, and I can't add more to it. I just want to put into perspective. 485 was 3 months ago, right? It feels like years and ages. At 485, nobody was complaining about anything, and now with the stock price at this price, people are worried, and obviously everything happening. People are physically worried when they take their Teslas, which is obviously not my case, but I can understand that people have different anxiety levels. So, when you ask us, Herbert, what's going to happen in the next 9 months, I mean, just think of the quantity of things that happened in the last 3 months. It's impossible to say what will happen in the next 9 months. But what is more possible to say is what will happen in 2 to 5 years. And so while I have no solution and can't give you any advice on the next 9 months, I sit in my car, I press the FSD button, and I'm not worried anymore because I know this works. It works everywhere. Yesterday, I had to go to LA and back for a couple of errands. It was perfect. It was just the perfect ride, never disengaged. There were lots of building construction sites and whatever, no worries. So the only thing that really matters is FSD rollout, how the cabs will perform, and then the bots. So, you can ignore all that noise if you can see that far. Now, it's up to you, to each individual of us, whether we get distracted by the daily noise, the weekly noise, the monthly noise, and the quarterly noise, or whether we can look beyond that and can ignore it, or at least can digest it easily. So, I can't really, help, because everybody has, like I said, different anxiety levels and different visions and different time horizons. But the one advice I want to give you all is just try to look as far out as you can.
I think that's a great advice. It just reminded me of what happened to me and my family, right? Yeah, we're obviously talking about what's going on with the brand, what's happening, all this noise. Then we just remind ourselves, we just drove from, Seattle to Portland and back, and it was like flawless, no issues. Focus on the fact that, FSD is very close. I think that what will need to happen for the rest of this year is really, it's like a confluence of so many things that have happened at the same time. And the big one, I think, is the economy, the tariffs. People are doing risk off at this point. And so that combined with this noise just really exacerbates what's happening with the stock. And also, if this improves over the course of this rest of this year, then all of these activities, those milestones, them launching a pilot with FSD, it will make a difference. Showing bigger, better numbers. But if it doesn't improve, I've seen for Tesla, you can have milestone, you can have presentation after everything, and it doesn't move the stock until the economy improves and investment comes back in. So maybe if Elon is correct and he usually is, that his work with Doge is actually going to change interest rates. It's going to actually change inflation. It's going to change the debt. And then the big money is going to realize that, the U.S. is back on track for growth. If that works, it's also a battle against perception. But if that works, then, any little announcement from Tesla at that point will then make a difference. Other than that, it won't make a big deal at all. So,
yeah, a couple of quick things. This comes down to execution, and Elon knows if the company is executing. I want to be very clear from being on the inside of a company that makes products and sell things. They know their inventory levels. They know their individual regions. They know seasonality. They know what the order inflow rate should be. And then they get an actual number every day. They'll know if they have a problem. And if they have a problem, we will see them adjust. We haven't seen any adjustments in price, by the way. We see inventory vehicles, got it. We see financing to compete with local regional financing rates. That's what's going on in China right now. If you look up BYD, if you look up Li Auto, they're all doing these financing deals. You saw them do it on Tesla this week. That's fine. Got it. You have to separate signal from noise. Tesla will know and Elon will know if there's a problem. And you have to go back in the history of him being the CEO of this company. And when has he ever just ignored a problem or not directly addressed a problem? The answer is you can't think of it. So they know this isn't a mystery to them. They know if there's a problem or not. The question, and Larry's brought this up, is how is his presence and how is this delivered on the next time the company talks about his results. Finally, on execution, the other portion of execution. So there's current quarter execution, and then what are the intermediate milestones as these new projects are being developed, whether it's new vehicles, whether it's unsupervised FSD, or whether it's humanoid robots. And there are intermediate milestones that are very visible inside of that company. There's tool release dates, there's major milestones for suppliers to be kicked off, all of these things. And no company bats 1,000, meaning, sorry to use an American term, no company literally hits the ball, every single time and has a perfect on every single one of these milestones. There's always some relative movement that I talked about, but they will know if they have a systemic execution problem or not, and then they have to course correct. Finally, if there is a current quarter execution problem, and if there is a future execution problem, and Elon's presence is a part of that problem, and then he's not executing, then I think people have fair feedback in terms of his presence within the company. But those things have to be asked and answered. And so far, he has done what is the greater good for the company. He has executed on those things. And so if you're invested in the company, or you follow the company and you follow its history, there's no reason to believe that why that pattern would be interrupted. But if that pattern is being interrupted, it is really incumbent upon Elon to course correct and change. And those changes could be a number of different things. But this is really more of an objective conversation than I think that many are had on the internet. It's like it's crazy world. It's Time Magazine and Rolling Stone reporting on January sales of Tesla. By the way, they don't talk about Rivian sales being down double in January as well. But anyway, it's bizarro. It's crazy world. It's tremendous noise. It's very little signal. It's up to Tesla to figure out how much of that signal they want to increase. But really, if you go inside of the company and you go in the cone of silence and saying, are we executing on current quarter? Are we executing on the new projects? And if the answer is no, my belief is that Elon is going to course correct and make the right changes. But everybody on the other side of this needs to decide that for themselves and for their own situation.
Here's some signal over the noise. After we spent the whole show talking about all this noise, this is signal. This is the first time that we saw in Giga Texas 6 cybercabs driving around, by themselves. No more chase car. They're just going around, and there's many of them, all at the same time. So, cars are driving themselves, guys. And thousands are leaving Fremont and now soon Texas, leaving being born, leaving the factory, driving themselves 2 miles to the parking lot. It's a good way to remind ourselves, right? This is what we need to think about. And it's coming soon, right? Hopefully by June. I still think though that in June, even though they launch it, it'll be small. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that June, all of a sudden the world's going to change. Everybody's going to realize Tesla's a big deal. It's going to take many, many months, if not even a year. But
yeah, it's the schedule. It's the schedule of monetization of these massive industry-changing inventions, and that's what the company needs to. As we get closer, they need to be more descriptive. I think it's I think it's fine. I think it's great what they did at We Robots. Like, here's the future over the next 2 to 5 years. But as we get closer and we say unsupervised in June, okay, and we say it's a small number, okay, what does that mean? And how do you see that growing over the next year? And you can give yourself a goalpost, you can give yourself a range, but as we get closer to these milestones, I think it's really incumbent upon the company to help us understand the schedule of monetization. What do they see? So instead, let's get something between the 10 to 30 trillion dollar conversations, and then over the next year, like, what do we see? And I realize with how extreme these inventions are, it actually becomes a little bit more difficult to predict those things. But more visibility would be better, always better. We're not going to get it all the time, but we can ask for it.
Are you suggesting, Jeff, that the company give us projections out beyond a year? What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting something between. First off, we don't have a live updated projection for units this year. We have the 20 to 30%, and then I'm not even clear what they guided on the first quarter call. But actually, Tesla says a lot, and a lot of it doesn't actually get translated. Like, they've said a lot about the Model Y transition, like you want to call it, and nobody even asked about it. But what I'm suggesting, Larry, is there's something between the 10 to 30 trillion dollar proclamation and filling in a little bit more of that. And I think they are. I think they're starting to, but the more they can fill in for that, the better. Can they say something about FSD take rates in these new regions? Can they say something about FSD take rate on V13 versus V12? Is there, if there's some relative news to deliver, is like basically as our performance step function improves through scaling laws, we're actually seeing people buy the product more. I think these things are all helpful for people to kind of fill in the blanks and say, all right, this company transitioning from a large percentage of his revenue being in selling cars and some energy to a much larger percentage being selling software and services.
I'd align with that a lot, and the company hasn't done very well at those kinds of guidelines or guidance. I think I don't know whether it was the company or say discouraged discussion on the old Twitter about questions, but I think it's time we take some lead in trying to talk about the kinds of questions that should be asked at the shareholders at the earnings call. It is so frustrating to see the number of questions that are burnt because they're just dumb questions and they're voted up. I think we should give some thought to some guidance about the structure of questions, the nature of questions, and even some sample questions which we think valuable. Because I think everything you've said, I support everything you said about what the company should guide or could guide. I think what we should give serious thought to as a group of bulls, and perhaps talk to a larger group of retail shareholders about the nature of the questions, the type of questions, and even some sample questions. It's the source of great frustration for me to see all that valuable question time burned fruitlessly.
Yeah.
Maybe we can make the recommendation, like right now they have like 10 questions that the retail investors type in, and then there's a survey, and the ones that get voted up are answered. And then you have 5 institutional analysts get online, talk, and ask 2 questions each. Why can't we have one of those be a retail analyst who's asking, better questions than they could do, and keep everything the way it is if that's the way you want to do it?
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't.
Larry, it's even beyond the retail questions. The company said we're taking the number one product down for several weeks in transition. The CFO made a statement.
Right.
And then the CEO made a statement that says we are battery constrained for the year. And none of the analysts, who many I have great respect for, none of them asked a question about those 2 things.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean,
But they asked about LiDAR.
but and the guy who asked about LiDAR, I mean, he surprised me a great deal. Anyway, the point is, we have to do better in terms of these questions that we're allowed and the questions that are on say. And I really think that it's time to, and maybe we should have a open house on X, having this conversation and sort of talking to a larger group of influencers and also retail shareholders that we invite, and talk about these questions, because gosh, the questions are the amount of, the unfortunate number of poor questions by both retail shareholders and institutional shareholders is a loss of a great opportunity.
I think, Herbert, you should invite Elon on our channel. 4 of us interview him. We'll know everything, right?
Yeah. It's
well, just remember that he's under some limitations of what he can or cannot say in a given period of time. I think the shareholders' call is the right call.
I think the point is that we can probably ask real questions, better questions than the generic questions that everybody who interviews him keeps saying and asking, when they should have known better, because it's already, So the earnings call is ending, or the Q1 is ending in 11 days. Right. And the Tesla Q1 earnings call is going to be about a month from now, somewhere around that time. So we will, show that live. We will host that live on this channel as well. So keep watching for that. Any last comments, guys, about what's happening here? It's like we have one of the best companies in the world. We love it. I love it. I think it's got, I love it because of the company, the product, the business models, and yet it's so noisy. There's a lot of hatred. And I guess that's one of measures of success, right? You have a lot of hatred. But I just remember when I love Apple, love Steve Jobs, love what they were doing because of the business model, because of the products, because of the company. They had some hatred, but it wasn't like this.
Well, it's also America, and I think the world is much more divided, politically divided, opinionated, divided, and all that.
And Elon is very political.
And Elon is part of that, right? So that brings it all down. Now, I want to get to the real important stuff. Is I put on lashes. I have no idea. I look at myself every 2 seconds because this is so strange. So I want all the comments about this is ridiculous.
Show us your lashes
Are you
again.
too old for that? Or it sort of helps. I don't know what it is. I think this is the real important topic today. Okay.
Yeah. I'm shocked that this is the very first time in your life you said that you actually put on lashes.
It is. I mean, there's so much happening in my life. I'm down 107 pounds, by the way, just to update everybody.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Incredible.
Thanks.
Amazing.
Well, it's hard to, we got lots of good news, and yet it's mired with some bad news. I guess that's part and parcel of everything, right?
Yeah, I think people should just stay focused, okay? And then in terms of people that buy Teslas, these are peaceful people. Yeah. People that work at Tesla locations, people that work at the factories, these are peaceful American people. So just keep that in mind, and just try to take the level of hate down. If you have a problem with the CEO's political message, then address the political message and the concern directly. Do not address it to the people that are peaceful people that just buy these vehicles, want to use them. They want to be safe. They want to, do good things for the environment, and they want to just buy a great product. And the same for the people that work at these companies. Just keep that in mind, that we're all literally neighbors. So I just, to me, that's the key message. These are real people. Like when you when you do something to someone's car, somebody worked at a job to be able to buy that car and afford that car. And when you damage it, you're damaging another human that has no influence on Elon's decisions and what he does. And we talked earlier in the conversation about Elon and his wealth outside of Tesla. So I just think a lot of this is misguided. But I also think that people have a message and they want to send a message. And I think that's also okay too. If you disagree, then do that. And I also think that it's incumbent upon Tesla to address what they're doing again for their employees and what they're doing for the brand. So I think all these things are in play, and it's all a valid conversation. But I think Larry was appropriate when he said, this thing too shall pass. I think everybody's just wondering, time and magnitude, and I think we'll get answers of that soon. Just hang in there.
All right. Well, thank you, Alexandra, Jeff, and Larry. This is the best panel there is. One of the best people in retail and Tesla. Great conversation, great analysis. Always comes with new information you don't hear anywhere else. Really appreciate you guys joining this panel. We do the Cyber Bulls every week. Join us again next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.